I just love living books as as a spine. I will probably never ever stop that. End of a school year. I've used one curriculum for an entire year. Did I use it without adapting it? Well, no, but I did use it for the entire year. Yay! But I'm so thankful for those of you who have been joining me and watching all that we've been doing with A Gentle Feast Cycle 3. So I've got a lot of questions from you all about A Gentle Feast, and I wanted to answer them here on this video and give you a quick review of our entire year and our experience with A Gentle Feast Cycle 3. So first off, if you're new here, hello, nice to meet you. I'm Ashley. I am a homeschool mom to 3 kiddos, and we've been homeschooling for the past 8 years at the time of this video. They are currently ages 6, 9, and 11. We picked the time period of the American 1800s, the Civil War, Reconstruction, and a little bit of American expansion. So that's what we were doing through this series with the books that came through there. The neat thing I like about A Gentle Feast is they break it down into wider groups of forms, so you can group other kids together, not have every single child. Like if you have 6 children, you're gonna have 6 different levels, and you're gonna be out of your mind trying to manage that. So I feel like for a larger family, that A Gentle Feast is wonderful with that, because you can group. Form 1 is your 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders. You can group them together into Form 2, which is 4th grade through about 6th grade. So my daughter was in Form 2 for this year because she was about 5th, 6th grade level-ish. So she did most of her stuff at a higher level than the boys did. So that is how A Gentle Feast works. So we're all doing the same time period. We're all doing the same topics, but they're sometimes reading different books, like when it's their individual readers. We all read a few history books and a few read-alouds all together. We did all that, several things together, which is how I've always done it. But then there were individual things that they each did on their own. So one of the things I noticed I adapted was I had to cut some things out. There was just not enough time for everything. And I want to encourage you, if you have to do that, don't be ashamed to do it. There are times where it's okay, as long as you're getting a good minimum done. I did share in my How Will I Ever Be Consistent in Homeschool video that sometimes you just have to, no matter how you feel, you got to suck it up and you got to push through and do it. But I did find, for the sake of our sanity, I had to cut back on a few things, mainly for my oldest. Some of the readings were, she was just not ready for yet. And I decided there were a few things I wanted her to read that was not in the curriculum. So I had to cut out some things. So she did start off with Men of Rome at the beginning of the year. I slowly weaned that out. She wasn't super interested, and I felt like we could hit that at a different time, and it wasn't as important to me for her to do that book this year. So we ended up cutting that out about a third of the way into the year. We didn't do a lot of ancient history this year. We didn't do a lot of British or world history this year. We just focused on the US history portion of it. And again, I think that's okay with my kids' ages. We'll get deeper and deeper into those other topics later. But some of the books I added that my daughter ended up reading was Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. That was not included in A Gentle Feast reading list. She read The Lightning Thief by, or the Percy Jackson and the Olympians Lightning Thief first book, because I was trying to appeal to some of her things that she likes to read. She's really into fantasy and dragons. So thankfully, a lot of the books that A Gentle Feast suggested for her age for literature were good suggestions for getting her out of her comfort zone and reading something differently. So we tried Pollyanna. Pollyanna was her first one, which I was so excited about because I loved the movie growing up. I never read the book. I don't know, growing up I saw all the movies. There's so many books to movies that I watch the movies of. But anyway, I loved the movie and I was like, oh yay, she gets to read the book. And it was at the beginning of the year, and I realized it was a little bit higher reading level than where she was at. I bet if I handed it to her now, she would probably do just fine. It was also on a topic that she wasn't super interested in, but I wanted her, to do her best, get as far as she could, She got about 2/3 of the way through the book, but she just was really not enjoying it. I think I've learned this from Sarah Mackenzie and the Read Aloud family. If, as adults, we don't always force ourselves to read a book we don't like. So, we're training our children to read books like adults do, not just, you have to read this, you have to read this. There are certain books I feel like I would push for her to do, but I realize she's really not enjoying Pollyanna. So I let her stop reading it. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. So we ended up just watching the movie. We watched it with all my kiddos, and I really enjoyed sharing that with my kids. They didn't love it, but it was really nice to just kind of compare what she did read in the book to the movie. There's a lot of things she said that happened in the book that didn't happen in the movie, and then she would talk about things that she saw was the same, and I thought that was really fun. So we were able to still use it as literature and to talk about it and learn from it, even though she didn't finish the book. And as far as geography, I pulled back on the scale because in this cycle for her form, she was supposed to read 3 of the Holling C. Hollis books. I think that's what it is. Holling C. Holling. He's got a very interesting name. But anyway, you're supposed to read 3 of them and do map work all throughout the year. And I basically picked one of them and had her spread that all throughout the year. So we just pulled back on that pacing, and I had her do it just once a week instead of multiple times. And there were some weeks, to be honest, we didn't get to it or she didn't get to it. But I do really like that way to do geography. So anyway, again, that was just something I had to pull back on, knowing our pace and what worked for her. So as far as geography, I did change that up a little bit too. We love the American Geo Journey book that A Gentle Feast suggested for my Form 1 students. And now looking back, I probably would have had my oldest do this as well. We loved the Homeschool pop videos. And I think in the first few weeks, it suggested we watch those videos for each state, and then he'd fill in his map, and then he'd fill in all the facts about each state. And it wasn't suggested for that for every single state, but my son loved it and kept asking for it. My youngest son too, and my oldest, they all kind of joined in and watched it. So for geography, we ended up just watching every Homeschool pop video for each state and then filling in the geography pages for it. So that's been really neat, and we liked that. I also added the CC Happy Mom classical conversations, geography songs. So she has songs that break up each region of the US, and then she sings through the states and their capitals. And we did that several years ago, last time we did US history in a cycle. And so I'm like, we're bringing that back. That's probably the best thing I've used for geography. So I liked adding that in with what we were doing as well. I loved the singing solfege lessons online. I keep forgetting to do that every week, but when we do get to them, I love them. My kids don't love them as much, but they're watching, and I can tell throughout the day they'll be singing the little thing that we learned from the lesson. So we really, really liked those as well. I just wish I could have fit them in a little bit more. That's my fault there, but that was a really neat music resource for teaching music. So there's that. That's what we did for music. Foreign language, I kind of changed that up a little bit. We use simple Spanish guides for a lot of our Spanish. I also added the 501 verbs from Spanish, and we just did a mixture of a lot of things. I'm not really super focused when it comes to the foreign language, but we got it done. We did a lot of Spanish this year, and it got done. And as far as the language arts, the language arts notebooks, we ended up not using them 100%. My Form 1 third grader, he was fairly faithful with his, and he's been doing his on a weekly basis. With my oldest, I've shared in another video that she started out with it and it was going okay, but I really felt like she just needed another kickstart and a little bit more direct instruction on writing. So I added in Fix-It Grammar and IEW, one of their themed writing units, and that's been helpful. But also for language arts, I did do a spelling book for each of them as well. I felt like the spelling with A Gentle Feast wasn't quite enough. I know it's way more Charlotte Mason than what I'm doing, but that was just something that I felt like I had to adapt and kind of roll with it and do a different style. It's definitely more traditional in the books that I've been doing for spelling, but I think my kids just need that right now. And I was not really confident in how I've been doing, lack of spelling we really just haven't been doing spelling in the last several years. So I was kind of lacking in my own confidence doing the Charlotte Mason style of spelling. So yeah, I used a different book for that, for each of my for my 3rd grader and my 5th grader. The other thing about language arts was we kept up with our narration journals, and I'm so proud of myself. That was, again, another goal that I had for myself this year, that we had lacked in the previous years, where they were really like once a month we would get to it. And I'm like, come on. So as far as narration goes, with the kids sharing with me what they remember, what they learned, what they heard, I do that constantly. Like, they're constantly doing oral narrations, and we'll have lots of good discussion, especially with our read aloud time. And they do tons of oral narration, but written narration, I knew I needed to up my game in, and they've been doing it on a weekly basis. I think we've missed it just a few weeks here and there, but in general, they've been doing their written narrations. My 3rd grader and my Form 1 3rd grader and my Form 2 5th grader have been doing it. What I do is, on one day each week, I have them pick one of the things they read. So I don't make them write written narrations for everything they read, because that would just take forever. Like, they're working on that muscle. So I thought I'd start small, and we'll do one reading each week. And I'm sure eventually, in the next few years especially, we're going to bump it up to more readings, or every reading. I know that's what the goal is for Charlotte Mason style homeschool, and that's my goal. I want to do that. But I thought I'd start small, and that's been going really well. So for my 3rd grader, my Form 1 3rd grader, on Fridays, I say, hey, what did you read this week? And we'll list off all the books, for example, or I let him pick the read aloud. So let's say for our read aloud, it was The Banks of Plum Creek. He read The Red Badge of Courage on his own, and he read his nature reader. So I asked him to think about those 3 books and pick one. Usually he picked nature reader. Eventually he started picking Red Badge of Courage. He picks one, and then I say, okay, tell me what you remember. And he'll tell me. Sometimes he'll usually tell me a good 6 to 8 sentences. He'll explain, oh, they did this, and then this happened, and blah, 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 blah. The only thing is, he doesn't love writing, so we shorten it. He'll tell me the whole thing, and then we'll shorten it, and we'll shorten it to 3 sentences, about anywhere from 2 to 4 sentences of what he read and what he did. I write it down on a whiteboard or a dry erase board, and then he writes it. So a few months ago, he was writing it and copying it, but we started going into typing it. So now he types his narrations, and then we paste that into his narration notebook. He does not love drawing, so he doesn't do any drawings for his narrations. That is just a no-go for him, and that's fine with me. My oldest, I tell her the same thing. What did you read this week? She picks one of those books, and then she writes. So she actually doesn't have to dictate to me anymore. She just gets in her book and then writes what she remembers from her reading. And sometimes she'll draw a picture, and sometimes she doesn't. And we make sure we label it with the title and the author and the date. And that's about it. So we do that once a week. And again, my goal for that would be to do up to twice a week, probably next year. So that's what we did for our narrations. Okay, something that I really, really, really enjoyed this year with A Gentle Feast, which I did share about this recently on another video, but if you haven't seen it yet, I'm going to tell you here. So I loved A Gentle Feast there you go. I loved A Gentle Feast morning time guide. This is the thing that I was the most consistent with, that I followed way more. I adapted it a little bit. I always adapt things, but I didn't adapt it a lot. And the poetry was wonderful. The art study, the poet study, the composer study, I loved it. I loved it. The Bible, we followed this pretty closely here. So I definitely am going to use the morning time guide, again, from the Gentle Feast. And even if you're not using a Gentle Feast full-on curriculum, if you just want to dip your toes into it, I highly, 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 highly recommend finding a morning time guide and using it. So you can find one that kind of goes along with the time period that you're studying, but it really doesn't have to. I really didn't, it didn't have to go along with what we were doing in history. It would have been just fine, on its own. So yeah. So that is what worked and what didn't this year with our school curriculum, just an overview, mostly of A Gentle Feast. A lot of you have been asking, am I going to be using A Gentle Feast again? If you haven't heard yet, I'm actually not using another Gentle Feast cycle next year, but I have to say this, It's not because it's bad, okay? So if you're looking for a good curriculum and you've been looking at doing a Gentle Feast, do it. Like, I loved it. Like, it was great. No huge issues. I did share with you how I adapted a few things, but that is just it. You can find a good curriculum and you can adapt it to your needs. And I really do like a lot of the good things about this. So I didn't not like a Gentle Feast. I have to say that, guys. But I looked at the next cycle and I didn't love the book list for that cycle. Wasn't quite ready to jump into it for next year. And I decided to go a different direction. Again, that being said, not because a Gentle Feast is bad. It's not bad. I love it. Part of it is just me and just the choices I make for my family and what fits for my family. And I don't always stick with the same curriculum. So if you've been following me for a while, you're gonna notice that. Or maybe if you're new and you've scanned through my videos, why are you not using that again? Why are you not using that? And it's hard to explain. It's hard to explain, guys, but I know that when you're searching for new curriculum, you're looking at, okay, what are the pros and what are the cons? And I did just share with you in this video some of those things. So, but for me personally, I'm mainly looking at the book list, and if it's gonna be too much that I'm not going to use, then I won't go with it. So I saw for cycle 4 that there were things I could go with, but there was a lot I wouldn't go with, and I decided not to use it at this time. So, but I did really love the choices for this year for cycle 3. It was great, and I had to adapt it a little bit, and that's okay. If I said it before, I can't remember, but I do like how it includes everything for all grades and all years. And you might have to adapt the language arts and have your own math just a little bit, but I felt like everything else was really, really nice. I love having my family all in the same time period and same topics, but I love having them, all my kids have different readers for their own age group and their age level. So I think that is what a Gentle Feast does very, very well with. Overall, I felt like I had a great year. I felt like I was the most consistent that we've ever been in our school, and I saw a lot of growth in my kids. And we had some really great discussions with the topics that we discussed, with the books that we read. I just love living books as a spine. I will probably never ever stop that. Like having living books as our history and our science spine is just what I love and what does really well for a family. Again, might not be 100% Charlotte Mason when it comes to the spelling or the language arts, but the living books thing is definitely something I can grab a hold onto. And that's what I think is really neat about homeschool style and about any curriculum, a Gentle Feast or anything else, is you don't have to, 100% do one style. So, and that's what I'm finding. I have been speaking a lot about Charlotte Mason style, but as I go, there's just certain things I'm not a follower of to a T, and I think that's okay. We can all be our own little eclectic families, but we can take pieces of things that we find and we use and we love and just grab a hold of those things that we love. And I know for my family, like I said, it's the living books. I can't get away from that. There's just other things that I might be a little more traditional on, but I know I just could never do textbook style school. I don't think I can. I don't know. I might be using a textbook style for science next year. I'll announce that in another video. So, all right, that's what I got for you today. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to chat about it. Please consider subscribing if you haven't yet. I know you may not be following me for a Gentle Feast for next year, but I'd be happy to have you continue following me as I homeschool my kiddos with our living books curriculums. I love chatting about that. And the memory work and the Bible, and okay, yeah, there's just so much there. You guys are awesome. You rock at homeschooling. Go find his joy among the noise. I'll see you later.